Hi, I'm Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that focuses on musicians, authors, and interesting people. We like to say we're making a difference one artist at a time. So sit back, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know. On the podcast today, we have a very interesting man in that he is an exceptional composer, but he's also an accomplished author. Now, his two passions come together in a brand new book about a composer who died before his wife had a chance to hear the special song that he had for her. The book is called Honey, If It Wasn't For You. Will you please welcome pianist, composer, and one of Smithsonian Magazine's 10 Innovators to watch in 2021, Barron Ryan. Welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm blown away by your music, and also this book seems quite interesting, too. Before we delve into the book, I want to go and look at the composer side of you first. I read in your bio that you're the son of two musicians.
That's right.
And grew up in a house that ranged from Mozart to Motown. Let's talk there and talk about how your love affair of music first began.
Yes, my father's a professional musician, and I would see him in concert from the time I was born, going around to, he played a lot of churches in like the Tulsa area. So I knew what a piano concert was supposed to look like. And I thought, well, I want to do that too. So I started lessons with him when I was 4. My mother is also trained musically. She's not a professional. She taught as a music teacher for a while, but by the time I was born, she was taking care of my 2 sisters and me. But she would take us around to nursing homes and retirement communities in my hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and would play the piano while my 2 sisters and I sang.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
She was also just a different sort of musical influence than my dad, but both very important.
Yeah, different spectrums as far as one is the accomplished performer, the other one is establishing and growing future performers and such. That's wonderful. Very good.
Yes.
As far as we started talking about Mozart to Motown, as far as musical influences, as far as who did you grow up listening to and enjoying?
Yes, I was a beneficiary of my parents' good musical taste. So I listened to a lot of Beethoven and Saint-Saëns and Tchaikovsky from my dad. Chopin, of course. He's still alive, and I get to play with him, which is marvelous as well. But he was trained classically in college and got his master's degree, and so he loved that music. But he also loved Oscar Peterson and Errol Garner, jazz greats at the piano, and so I grew up with that music as well. And my mother would put on the oldie station at that time was 50s and 60s. So we would listen to the Beach Boys and the Beatles and Motown on that was our cleaning music on for cleaning the house. Very energizing. And then I started developing my own musical tastes. I discovered Tower of Power in high school. And I thought, wait, funk is great, and I haven't gotten over. My love affair with funk has not ceased since then. That's one of my favorite styles still. So I've always looked just for a sense of wonder in music and in art more generally. I'm not terribly concerned with what category of music may lie in. I just think does it leave me with awe, and that's really what I care about. It's not necessarily what category it belongs to.
Wonderful. You were talking about your dad being a music major, and you were a piano performance major at the University of Oklahoma, and then after an international concert tour, you wound up winning a piano competition. Let's talk about this.
Sure. So I decided to get serious about music when I was 16. I was just a kid. I was playing outside. I was playing sports before then. And then I realized that I needed to do something for a living. And it's not like music seemed like a very lucrative living, but I saw my dad doing it. And I seemed to have some aptitude for it as well. So I thought, okay, I actually, before that, I was planning to be an engineer of some sort. I went to this math and science camp, and there was a rocket competition, and I did reasonably well in this. And I thought, well, these engineers seem to make a lot of money. I should do this. And then I took AP physics, and then I thought, well, this is not for me. So I decided to get serious about music, and my competition for getting serious about music, they make that decision, or the decision is made for them, either way, about 10 years sooner. So I went to the University of Oklahoma. I did well there, but I thought I want to go to some august music conservatory. That will, when people read that name in my bio, they'll say, oh, wow, he must be very good. We must book him for a concert. But I was behind, and I knew that, but I thought, well, maybe if I just show these professors how hard I'm willing to work and show them my winning personality, then they'll be willing to take a chance on me. But alas, at least that year, none of them were, and so I didn't get into any of these elite institutions, and so I didn't know what to do for a while. But I did get the opportunity to compete in a piano competition that was open only to residents of the state of Oklahoma over the age of 21 who played classical piano. And there were four of us. So much smaller field than trying to get into the biggest names in classical music in terms of institutions. So I won that, and it sent me on this international concert tour. And that's when I realized, I told you that I don't really care to try to fit into any one category. Mm-hmm. That's when I realized that if I told a story, that I could bring people along, that I didn't have to. People want to be able to call you something. They want to give you a name or give your music a name. But I realized that I could pick what that name was. So it didn't have to be classical or jazz or ragtime or what have you. I decided to play music in which classic meets cool, and that can mean whatever I need it to mean at the time.
And that's what made a living for Jeff Lynne with the Electric Light Orchestra. He brought classical music, he brought in all the instruments and such, and made a rock show out of it.
Yeah, and you can combine different things, and even that is one of the possibilities. But I intentionally didn't choose classical meets cool. It's classic meets cool, mm-hmm. which is not. It doesn't even tell you. Neither of those two things is exactly a genre in itself. It's just basically it's the shortest possible story that I can tell about the music that I make, and then hopefully it will invite the listener in to learn more.
Very good. Now, doing some research of this man, I found out that he had 4 albums already, and one particular song on Spotify has over 500,000 listens, a beautiful piece. I wonder what's the backstory on this gorgeous song?
Well, for a while, I would send out a Christmas card, a musical Christmas card. I would make a single. So I do have 4 albums. That one is not on any of the albums. It's just a single that I made one year. And then I would upload it. So I would send out the CD to friends and supporters, and then I would upload it to Spotify. And thankfully, that one got selected on a Spotify curated playlist called Relaxing Christmas. Mm-hmm. And it's been on that playlist for a few years now. It hasn't been bumped off. I keep thinking, I bet it's going to get bumped off this year, but thankfully it hasn't. And it's a very good. I'm still very proud of that arrangement, of that beautiful, haunting melody. But I don't think it's. I mean, it has exponentially more listens than the rest of my music, but it's just because of that selection for that playlist, which I'm very grateful for still.
Yeah, there you go. It's sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know type thing.
Right,
you know?
Right.
All right, so we're going to play it right now. I Wonder from today's podcast guest, Barron Ryan. That's I Wonder as I Wander from today's podcast guest, Barron Ryan. It's something that's not actually found on any of his 4 albums. It's available on Spotify if you'd like to go ahead and check that out. Now, I want to also mention something else. He has a lot of other great music out there, one of which happens to be probably one of my favorite classical pieces of all time. He does an excellent piano solo on it. Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. I just have to say, well done.
Oh, thank you. You're very generous.
Very. That's one of my all-time favorite songs of any genre.
Mm-hmm. Gershwin is an amazing melodist. He could write a melody that you can think about the rest of the day and for many days to come. And Rhapsody in Blue is proof of that.
Very good. For those of you who don't know which song that is, that's the one that United Airlines has been using for years on their commercials.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Now, before we continue, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I invite you to check out our website, SomeoneYouShouldKnowPodcast.com. You're going to find our recent news, our archive of past episodes, and a whole lot more. By the way, if you're there and doing a little exploring, down on the first page, there's also a way where you can go ahead and let us know how we're doing. We do appreciate all your comments, and we're always making adjustments and such. And we're so blessed to reach so many cities around the world. I'd like to salute a couple cities. Valparaiso, Indiana, thank you for listening. Pittsburgh, PA, and Madrid, Spain. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks for listening. And I would like to say welcome back to the interview we've got here with Barron Ryan. I see here, before we get to the book, we're going to talk about the book, but I have to unpack this first. You were nominated one of Smithsonian Magazine's 10 Innovators to Watch in 2021. You got to tell us about this accolade.
Absolutely. I was commissioned to write an original classical composition for violin, cello, and piano to commemorate the centennial of the Tulsa Race Massacre, which happened in 1921. So it was a very heavy event. This was a racially charged incident that left the black district in Tulsa called Greenwood. It left it decimated. It was burned to the ground. There were many people dead after an allegation of impropriety in an elevator. And so this was a nationally prominent event, and I was honored to be asked to write a piece about it. Smithsonian Magazine caught wind of it and gave me this honor without ever having heard the piece. Nobody had heard the piece at this point when they gave me this, because I had just finished writing it, and I hadn't even heard it, as outside of my computer where I had input the notes. But I'm very thankful to them that they had the belief that it was going to be good, and I believe that it has turned out to be good. And in fact, there is a development on that, because I wrote this piece. It was about 15 minutes long, and it's based off of an eyewitness account, which says that a mother and her daughter went upstairs when they realized what was happening to read a chapter or two of the Psalms of David. And the darkest lament psalm is Psalm 88 by many people's estimation. And in it, there's a verse that says, "My soul is full of troubles, and my life draweth nigh unto the grave." And so I called my piece, "My Soul is Full of Troubles." But then I thought, I don't want to leave people in grief, because Tulsa has endured beyond that period, beyond that event in history. And the Psalms don't end in grief. They end in triumph. And so I have written 2 more movements to that piece to make it a full 3-movement work called "There Arises Light in the Darkness." And the first movement is struggle. The second movement is discovery or prayer. It's also based off of a Psalm verse, and it's called "Unto Thee Have I Cried." And then the last movement is triumph, and it's called "The Heavens Shall Praise Thy Wonders." So that will premiere actually in later this year, and I plan that will be my next album.
Wonderful.
That people have to look forward to.
Very good. Well, we might have to have you back on to talk about that.
I love it.
Now, the book is called "Honey, If It Wasn't for You: The Story of a Composer Who Died 6 years before you were even born." How did this even come to your attention?
So I became friends with a woman named Don Fagin in 2018, and she was an enthusiast of music and a supporter of me. She would call me and say, "Hey, I heard this." She saw me in concert, and then we connected, and she would say, I heard this great piece on NPR by James P. Johnson. Have you ever heard it?" And we would meet when she was in town. She lives between my hometown and a place an hour away. And it was only 2 years into our friendship that she said, "Did I ever tell you that my husband was a songwriter?" And I said, no, you never mentioned that. And then she said, he left behind these boxes of song lyrics. I wonder if you would want to look at them. So her husband, Don Fagin, was born in 1943 and he has cystic fibrosis. So he knew from the time he was a boy that he would not live as long as most, but he still was determined to live a full life anyway and survive to adulthood, which, especially for that time, was unusual with cystic fibrosis. So he got married when he was 24 to Linda. And a few years into their marriage, they realized that he couldn't have a full-time job. He had a great way with words and he loved music. And he initially worked in advertising, but he was in the hospital 3 months out of the year on average. So he needed something that he could do on his own time. And so they decided that he could write songs. So he actually had Charlie Pride record, I believe, 3 songs. I thought it was 2, but I just recently learned it was a 3rd. And Charlie Pride's a Grammy-winning country singer.
Of course, yes.
And but then he died when he was 38. And so he left behind these boxes of lyrics that Linda then referred to 40 years later that she told me about this. And so finally she let me see them. She realized after she mentioned this, she says that it was just offhandedly that she mentioned these boxes to me. And I insisted that I wanted to see them if she were interested, because I knew what an honor it was that she would tell me this after 2 years of knowing her. And so she gave me these boxes finally, and I knew that the best story that could come out of me having access to this material was if I found lyrics to a song that Don wrote about his wife, Linda, and that I could set it to music. And so I found exactly what I was looking for. It's a song called Honey, If It Wasn't For You. And I set it to music, and I knew that the story about the song needed to be known outside of just the song itself. It's a good song, but the story is so much more powerful when you know what went into making the song. And so that is what the book itself is about.
Wonderful. Now, how does Don's widow feel about the song after she's heard it and everything?
It has grown more and more on her. It's not like she was against it initially. I didn't do anything without her blessing. Mm-hmm. And so if she were the only person who ever heard the song, then that would be okay with me. But she did say, I said, Linda, this will be the most beautiful story that I've told thus far. And so she believed me and trusted me. And as time has gone on and she's seen people react to it, she's realized that it's not just about her. Initially, she thought, oh, this is just people are going to listen to this song and hear this story and just kind of voyeuristically look at her life. But what she didn't realize is that with any great work of art, that it's specific, but it's also general. People can take the specific circumstances and apply it to their own lives. And so we just had actually yesterday, as we're recording this, we had the local release event in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she said that she was trying to get to me afterward, but she couldn't. We never spoke. We spoke once people had finally left, but she tried for an hour and a half to get over to me at the reception, but people kept stopping her and talking to her to thank her for letting them hear the story and saying, well, I could write that song could have been about my wife or about my husband or whoever. And so she's now seeing how universal this story is and how powerful it is. And so she's she grows more and more glad to have said yes to me asking if I could share it.
Awesome. Very good. The book came out in August the 1st. How's it selling?
It's selling well. And it's very gratifying to hear the response because it's an unconventional format. It's a storybook. It's about 700 words or so, and it's illustrated. So when you look at it, it's a format that usually is used for children's books. But I really wanted to tell the story in a succinct way, in a way that I could read the book. And in fact, I've done this for the last year, read the book right before I play the song on stage. And so the people have really responded well to the format. Some children like it too, although it's not necessarily intended for them. But there are some who have appreciated it immensely as well. So I hope that it continues to build because it's such a uniquely powerful story, a story that took really almost 80 years because that's how long it's been since Don was born to come to fruition. And this sort of tale doesn't happen every day. It's really it's a once in a lifetime tale, probably for me. And so I hope that it continues to to reach a broader audience, an audience that I think that the story itself deserves.
Awesome. Very good. Now, where's it available at? I think everyone who's listening now wants to pick up a copy, especially Christmas is coming. Christmas is coming.
Yes.
Yes.
I sure hope so. You can go to book.barronryan.com. And there's a link there directly. You can get the ebook or you can get the hardcover. And the hardcover is available on Amazon. So that's where that link will take you. But book.barronryan.com is the place to go.
Very good. Your other socials that people can find you and find out where you're going to be, if you're going to do more book signings, if you're going to have another album come out or whatever, what would be the best place to check out you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on all the socials, Instagram and Facebook. You can search for Barron Ryan, and you should find my salt and pepper beard and my bald head smiling at the camera. And then my website is barronryan.com, and you can find tour dates and my contact information, all those social links as well. So that's really the home for everything that I do.
Very good. And I'll have that down in the show notes. So if you're out driving right now, don't pull over. Go ahead and drive on to work. And
yes, please.
Just look at the show notes when you get to work. The boss doesn't mind, especially if you're going to buy the book. And the reason why I say that, as an added bonus, when you do buy the book, you're going to get the download of the song that took 40 years to come to life. Mm-hmm. And now, what emotions do you feel now that you hear the song? Do you still get that same vibe that you did from the first time that you heard it, or do you feel like you've really accomplished something?
Well, I feel less pressure now that the song is out and the book is out. I think it's the feat has been accomplished, at least mostly. I feel gratitude, really, is what I feel, that what makes this song so beautiful and the story so beautiful is the immense amount of sacrifice that was required to make it. Linda and Don were married for 14 years, and it was a difficult marriage because he was sick essentially the whole time. And so he had to battle through that. Linda, the burden on her to care for him and to keep the house going in some respects was that came together. I get to express that in this book and in this song. And so I'm grateful for the love really that gets to be conveyed and that I get to share it because I was the one who was uniquely positioned for Linda to offer those lyrics to, and then to ultimately bring the story to the world.
Very good. Any final thoughts that we should know about our good friend Barron Ryan?
I've been so I've articulated a mission over the last year or so because there's a number of projects that I'd be willing to take on, and I was trying to think, how do I, like this book, for instance, which is it's not just music by itself, and so I've been trying to think, how do I explain what I'm doing, and in a way that it makes sense. And so I've articulated this mission, which is to discover and present the beauty I'm uniquely positioned for. And beauty goes back to whatever it is that I was talking about earlier, whatever gives you that sense of wonder, that feeling of awe. And I feel grateful because music is a wonderful way to do that, but it's not the only way. And in fact, art is not the only way. Beauty comes in the form of a home-cooked meal or an encouraging word or any sacrifice that you make on behalf of someone you care about. And so I encourage everyone who's listening to find your own unique ways of offering beauty to the world. It is something that the world desperately needs, and that those that you are closest to will most greatly benefit from, because those that we are closest to are the ones that we can most effectively express love for. So
sounds exactly like the podcast. As far as that's what I'm out here for, is to help spread the word about the good music, the good authorship out there, and all the interesting people. And I think you and I are running a pretty parallel on that particular thing.
It would seem so.
We're going to close the show with the song we've been talking about, Honey, If It Wasn't For You. And Barron, thank you so very much for being a guest on the podcast. It's nice to meet fascinating individuals like yourself.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I was sleeping when she left again this morning, returning to her job another day. She leaves me back home dreaming, gotta make it on my own. I pray the words will come to me today. She tells me her new work gives satisfaction, and for me not to worry while she's gone. She swears it makes her happy to leave me to my space, for surely it's hard work that writes a song. Honey, if it wasn't for you, honey, if it wasn't for you, there would be no song. Honey, if it wasn't for you. And if I had 1,000 years to write them all again, this is still the way that it would be. For you still hold the treasure to each and every line, and your love song still keeps calling out to me. Honey, if it wasn't for you, honey, if it wasn't for you, there would be no song. Honey, if it wasn't for you, honey, if it wasn't for you, honey, if it wasn't for you.
Hi, this is Rick Anthony, thanking you again for tuning in to this episode of the Someone You Should Know podcast. Before I go, I want to share some friends of mine who also have a podcast. Give them a listen, and I invite you to check us out next time right here on the Someone You Should Know podcast. All right, here's my friends right now from the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast.
Hey, everybody, it's Ray the Roadie.
And this is Hollywood Mike
with the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast, coming to you from the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum on Route 66 in Joliet, Illinois.
Where once a week we are interviewing local musicians and singer-songwriters. And the podcast itself covers a wide range of topics, including, but not limited to, the history of rock and roll in Chicago, the current state of the scene, and the challenges and opportunities facing musicians today.
So join us every Tuesday for a new exciting episode of the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast.